Hello and welcome, Claire Attic here, and I'm delighted that you are joining me today for another update to our video training series. Now, over the past week since the announcement of national lockdown, I've had a lot of questions coming through all about updates to the financial support available from the government. So I've decided to pop together a bit of a training session just to give you an overview about what's in there and what has been updated. So for those who don't already know me, I'm actually a chartered accountant. I work as a finance coach and profit strategist, helping small business owners become more comfortable with the money side of their business. Now, I've worked in corporate finance for many years, climbing the corporate ladder, and for the last 5 years I have been working on my own bricks and mortar business. So I'm more than familiar with some of the issues and problems you encounter as a small business owner. So I'm here to help. So let's get started. The first thing I want to emphasise is that the guidance is constantly changing, so it's always worth checking the latest information, whether you look at the government website gov.uk or whether you consult with your own financial advisor. So I've divided the training into 3 main parts just to make it a little bit more digestible for you. The idea is that you can dip in and out as to the bits that you need, and you don't have to wade through the stuff that's not relevant to you. Part 1 that we're talking about today will cover some of the support available to all small businesses, regardless of your structure or industry. Now, these include some of the loans available and also the HMRC time to pay service. And we'll also talk a little bit about the grant that is available to some people who are self-employed or operate as sole traders. In part 2, we will talk about the support available to those who complete a self-assessment. Now, that's whether you are a sole trader, self-employed, or that you are a director of a limited company. Both of you will have to complete self-assessments. We also talk about if you're a VAT registered business and you deferred your VAT payment, there's now the option to further spread that, which we'll discuss today. And also we will cover some of the various support measures for businesses with premises in terms of the business rates. In part 3, we'll be talking about the measures specific to limited companies, and we will also be discussing some of the support packages for businesses with employees that are on a PAYE scheme. Now, this is generally those that are in limited companies, but obviously it doesn't exclude you if you are a sole trader and you have employees on a PAYE scheme too. As I mentioned, dip in and out of the training. I will pop some timestamps in the comments, so just listen to the bits relevant to you. You don't have to plough through the whole lot. So when I talk to many small business owners, they are often quite confused at just what is relevant to them. They're aware of different support packages available, but they don't know which is applicable to them. So I've put a summary table together, just highlighting the different packages available depending on your own circumstances. So just running through it, available to all small businesses, subject to eligibility criteria, of course, regardless of your legal entity setup or how you what industry you're in. We've got the coronavirus bounce back loan, the coronavirus business interruption loan, and also the HMRC time to pay service. If you are self-employed or a sole trader, we've got the self-employed income support scheme, and that's actually an extension to the previous grants. We'll discuss that later today. For those who complete a self-assessment, there's a deferment payment option. VAT registered businesses, again, there's an option to defer payment. Those businesses with a premises, we've got different grants and options available for you, which we will talk about in part 2. And then for limited companies and businesses with employees that are under a PAYE scheme, there's also some specific measures available for you too. So this gives you a complete overview. In part 1 today, we will be talking about those that are available to all small businesses, subject to your eligibility criteria, and the self-employed/sole traders. So let's get started with the coronavirus bounce back loan. Now, this is a loan that has been available for a number of months already and allows you to borrow between £2,000 and £50,000 into your business. Now, the maximum amount you can borrow is capped at 25% of your turnover being the income that comes into your business. Now, what has changed recently is that the closing date has been extended. So it has now been extended as far as the 31st of January 2021. But with all financial loans, you are being encouraged to apply for that finance as soon as you possibly can. There is a process that you need to go through, and that process does take time. Slots are filling up and being allocated. So if you are interested in getting the loan, then do not hang around. Get onto it as soon as you can. So it's worth highlighting this is a loan, not a grant, so it will need to be paid back. It's available to UK businesses that were trading before the 1st of March 2020 and have been adversely affected by the impact of coronavirus. Now, what is new is that from the 10th of November 2020, you can actually apply to top up a previously borrowed amount. This wasn't permitted before, but the government have recognised that many small businesses who borrowed right back in the early days when the loan was first announced only borrowed a very small amount, not knowing how long and how hard that the effects of coronavirus would last. So they're allowing you one chance to top up. Now, it's important because you just get this one chance at doing that you do get it right. So I would strongly advise you to go and talk to a financial advisor in terms of what is the best amount to borrow. You obviously want to borrow enough to be able to get you through the next few weeks and months, but you don't want to borrow too much that it compromises your ability to repay and operate as a financially viable business going forwards. Now, the loan is 100% government backed. Now, this is important because many loans that you will get on a commercial basis require you to guarantee it on a personal basis, which basically means whilst the business is borrowing the money, you may have to back it up with your own personal assets, which could mean, for example, that your house or your car or any other property that you own may be at risk if you're not able to keep up those repayments. This is 100% government backed, so the government is taking that risk on the loan. There's no repayment or interest for the first 12 months applied on it, which is brilliant. You can borrow the money now and there's no impact in terms of your cash flow for the next 12 months. After the first 12 months, there will then be interest applied of 2.5%. Now, this is a relatively low amount of interest compared to a lot of loans available. So if you are needing money into the business, this loan is an attractive one to go for. You'll need to apply direct with the lender. There are currently 28 on the scheme. Now, I would strongly advise you that you go with the lender where you already have some kind of relationship in place, whether that's in terms of your business banking or your personal banking. You are much more likely to get the application through in a quick manner if there is already that relationship in place. However, if you are turned down by a lender for whatever reason, you are allowed to go and approach other lenders. So it's not the end of the world. Do keep trying and hopefully you can get those funds in place. So next up is the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan. Now, again, this is a loan, so it does need to be paid back. It's not a grant, where you can borrow up to £5 million, so significantly more money than you can get through the bounce back loan. The closing date as for the bounce back loan has been extended and is also the 31st of January 2021. That is the date to which you can apply, and is open to all viable UK businesses that have been adversely affected by coronavirus. And those businesses have to have an annual turnover of less than 45 million. Now, unlike the bounce back loan, only 80% is government backed. It's still a high proportion, but that 20% that's not backed by the government means there's a little bit more risk to the lender, and accordingly they will be doing a little bit more work to check that it is a safe investment and that they will get their money back. Now, if the loan is less than £250,000, the lender is not allowed to ask you to guarantee it with your own property or your savings, so that 20% risk does have to be taken by the lender. The government pay the fees and interest for the first 12 months on the loan, and then after that the lenders will decide the rate thereafter. Now, the government have encouraged them to be sensible with the rate that they decide on, but it is not capped and controlled as it is for the bounce back loan, so it may be a little bit more expensive. You apply direct with the lender. Again, there's 50 lenders on this scheme. Again, apply with the one that you generally have the relationship with already. You're much more likely to get it through. And because of that additional element of risk for the lender, because it's not fully government backed, there will be much more scrutiny over things like your business plans and your forecasts and such than you will be seeing on the bounce back loan. But it is available. It is there to use. So use it if you need to. Just a final note, if you have borrowed under the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan, then it does mean that you cannot apply for a bounce back loan. However, there is the option to transfer the amount that you have borrowed under the interruption loan across to the bounce back loan if that is something that you wish to do. So if you've got the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan, there is the option to switch it over to a bounce back loan. So next up is the HMRC Time to Pay service. Now, HMRC is very aware that there are a lot of people who are struggling at the moment. They do want to pay their taxes. They've got every intention of paying it, but it may just be that they're experiencing significant cash flow problems at the moment. So they are encouraging you to get in touch to discuss those problems and come up with a reasonable way of paying them. So you can request affordable monthly payment options that will be determined completely on a case-by-case basis. As a general rule of thumb, HMRC typically never expect you to be paying more than 50% of the disposable income available to you. Some payment plans you can set up directly online. You don't actually need to call HMRC. So the self-assessment one that we will talk about in part 2 is an example of this. But others you will need to speak to HMRC directly, and they might take you through a number of questions to get that payment plan approved. So just to stress again, if you're worried about anything, any ability to pay, always be proactive. Speak to HMRC. You won't be able to get away with it by putting your head under the table, and it's always best to be upfront, and it may help you to avoid those penalties and get extensions on those timings for you, which could help you massively in terms of your cash flow at the moment. Last up for today, we are going to talk about the Self-Employed Income Support Scheme extension. So many of you will have used this scheme earlier in the year. It's a scheme that have paid out grants to some eligible self-employed workers, and this is an extension. So grants 1 and 2 have already been issued, so this extends it to grant 3, which covers a 3-month period from the 1st of November to the 31st of January, and then grant 4, which covers the period 1st of February to the 30th of April. Grant 3 has now been confirmed that it will give up to 80% of your average trading profits, a maximum of 7,500, which, as some of you will remember, is the same as Grant 1. Now, what is interesting is when this was first announced, the level was only 20%, and they have increased it 4 times since they first announced it. So it was 20% when they first announced it, 40%, increased it to 55%, and then finally to 80%. In terms of Grant 4, we don't yet know what those amounts are going to be. That will be announced in due course. So I won't go into huge amounts of detail in terms of the eligibility criteria for this grant, as many of you will already be very familiar with it. It's primarily the same as grants 1 and 2, i.e. you filed a 1819 tax return, greater than 50% of your income have come from trading profits, and your trading profits have been less than £50,000 in a year. And also, again, to stress this one, your business has to have been adversely affected by COVID. This is not open to all self-employed people. If your business is healthy or your business is booming, you are not eligible for this grant. And by claiming it, you will open yourself up to potential fraud claims later on. So just be careful that you can prove and evidence that you are being adversely impacted. Now, what is new to this one compared to 1 and 2? It only applies if demand for your business has been reduced or stopped, i.e. it now excludes scenarios, for example, if you can't work due to self-isolation or shielding. So that is an important change to this grant, grant numbers 3 and 4. You can keep working, and also you can apply for some of the other support as well. LRSG is the Local Restrictions Support Grant, which we'll talk about in a subsequent video, and also Universal Credit. Now, this is open for applications from the 30th November 2020, so you can't quite yet apply, but at the end of this month, 30th November, it will be open for applications. Finally, I just want to add, in terms of additional support for self-employed people, I know there's a lot of talk and debate in terms of the holes that are open in terms of the support for a lot of self-employed people. I am not a personal finance expert, but I have listed down here some of the things that you may want to think about if you are not covered by that grant. You've obviously got your universal credit, and the government have confirmed that self-employed individuals can access it in full if required. There is a new style employment support allowance, which may be used in circumstances, for example, if you're not eligible for statutory sick pay. There There is schemes in place to provide relief in paying back loans and credit cards. Ask for a mortgage payment holiday in terms of your own personal mortgage if this is something that you've not already requested. And also think about your self-assessment time to pay, which will be discussed in part 2. There is an option now to start to defer some of those payments and spread them out, which may help you again with your cash flow. So I do feel for all of you out there who are caught in this very, very unfortunate situation where you're not covered by the grants and the support, please try and access the other things out available to you, and I wish you all the best with that. So in summary then, we have covered today in part 1 the support applicable to all small businesses, subject to meeting that eligibility criteria, of course, including the bounce back loan, the business interruption loan and the HMRC time to pay service. And we've also covered in part 1 the support applicable to some sole traders and self-employed people, which is that SEISS grant. So there we have it. Well done for getting to the end of part 1. I hope you are now feeling a little bit more confidence in terms of your knowledge about what is out there for small business owners, in terms of some of the loans available, the HMRC's time to pay service, and also if you are self-employed, the grant that is available for some of you to access. If you've got any questions at all, come and join us in the private Facebook group, Financial Growth for Small Business Owners, and I will be there to answer any of your questions. So join me back here again tomorrow for part 2, where I will be talking all about some of the support available if you complete a self-assessment, so whether you're self-employed or the director of a limited company. I'll also be talking about the relief in terms of the VAT registered businesses, and if you are a business that has a property that you either lease or own, then some of the relief in terms of the rates around those. So join me back again tomorrow. In the meantime, have a good day and bye for now.